Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Alphabet City from 1984. Johnny, who has asked by his crime boss Gino to torch the apartment building his mother and sister live in. He is trying to get out of it and trying to get out of the crime life. This film takes place over one night. He's very quickly realizing he needs to get out of Alphabet City and stop being a drug dealer and kind of debt collector for the mob and enforcer for the mob and try to clean up his life while Gino is pressuring him to burn down his mother and sister's apartment building. This film, I guess I'd say, kind of has a cult film fascination with me. I don't necessarily think this is like what you'd normally consider a good movie. Just a strange little 80s, very 80s, in fact incredibly 80s, little crime drama sort of. But I guess I don't really like it for the crime drama. I like it for the style and the music. Sometimes I've compared it to like an 80s version of Drive. This film's directed by Amos Poe, who has a pretty cool name for a director, who also was a no-wave filmmaker. He made one of the first kind of punk no-wave movies, The Foreigner, and a film Subway Riders, which I'd also really like to see but haven't seen. His whole concept, I guess, said on his Wikipedia page, is that in postmodernism you kind of take older ideas to make something new, and he's taking contemporary ideas to make something new to show how he thinks art will be in the future, which is an interesting kind of concept. Makes for kind of an interesting idea for a movie because this is so impeccably 80s and so incredibly dated because of that, but that's kind of what I love about it. This kind of neon pink lighting, 80s music and 80s style, and this awesome car he drives around in, which is a Pontiac Trans Am 25th Anniversary Daytona 500 edition. There are only about 2,500 that were ever made, and it's this cool looking 80s car, but it's just like even his outfit, he's wearing like this mesh tank top, he's wearing a leather jacket, just the kind of thing that you couldn't wear other than in the mid 80s. It carries it so well, it's just like a fun watch. I watched this for the style of it, and especially because of the music by Nile Rodgers. Now Nile Rodgers, who just had that hit with Daft Punk with Get Lucky, but he also produced like a version for Madonna, and he did the music for this film, and the music is amazing. It's kind of criminal that this soundtrack is incredibly hard to find. Like, some people don't even think it was ever in print because it's so unavailable. I wish I had it, and I would pay quite a bit of money for it because I love the score. The end song in this film, Lady Luck, is actually by this band, The Breakfast Club, that a lot of people believe is sung by Madonna. It's actually not sung by Madonna. I found out actually through a YouTube comment that it was actually done by singer Moria Monahan, I think. But Madonna wanted to sing it, but she didn't sing it actually, which is kind of interesting. But I thought actually it was Madonna until like right before filming. The score Nile Rodgers did in this is very 80s. It's very kind of Miami Vice. This whole film has a kind of Miami Vice feel about it, but it's in New York, in Alphabet City, New York, which is avenues A, B, and C. He just brings out the funky guitar, the synthesizer idea of this kind of a New York, with the Oliver Wood who shot this film in kind of these pink lights, and even the crack house. There's a scene in this crack house and he makes it very flashy and stylized. Oliver Wood, well, I think was kind of famous for the 80s kind of Miami Vice type of cinematography, but then he would end up working on things like the Bourne films and recently Two Guns, so he got out of that, but he's really the one who came up with that style. That's one of the things I really like about this film, is how it was shot. It has a real expressive quality to it. This film is almost flow over storytelling because the storytelling isn't strong. It almost feels like a collection of scenes. It seems to work in like a fantasy world, like when Vincent Spano, who plays Johnny throughout the film, when he's driving his fancy 80s car speeding through New York and there's like no traffic, which even in the 80s seems pretty implausible. It's fantasy New York, fantasy 80s New York. And I kind of like that about it because I know a lot of critics at the time brought up that this film was so stylized and completely unrealistic, but to me that's what I like about it. I think that's what's so glorious about it, what makes this a cult movie. Like, who would have this kind of idea to do this kind of a crime drama bathed in like neon lights the whole time with like Nile Rodgers synthesizer music going on? I think that's an amazing little fantasy world, and that's what I like about Alphabet City. There's a certain kind of weird subset of cult movies where it's not a good movie, you know it's not a good movie, but you have like a weird fascination with it and you enjoy watching it. And that's definitely something I have with Alphabet City. I saw this through Turner Classic Movies through their TCM Underground. They usually play it very late at night, but I always try to see what's going to be on TCM Underground. And I think they played this 2 or 3 times, and every time I've DVR'd it and watched, because I just love this movie. They did have it on Netflix for a little bit. I think it's gone now, but I used to actually just put it on just so I could hear the music. It kind of makes you want to go more into that fantasy world. This film is encouraging. I mean, it's kind of like a crime drama from the 40s, but in this 80s fantasy neon world. I really like this movie, but as a cult fetish. I understand when people are like, well, it's not really a good movie, it's kind of over the top in some of its acting and some of the things it's trying to do. But I understand the criticism of the time of its release. But I love the style of it, I love how it's shot, and I love the music of it. And that, to me, actually outweighs all the other things of this film that don't necessarily work. Some of the rules you put forth to judge certain films don't work for other films. It's not a kind of such a black and white, simple idea to process art. Art is different, and art can be different, and filmmakers can make different kinds of films that can work in different kinds of ways. And I like Alphabet City in that regard, in that it works in kind of this weird, hyper stylized 80s Nile Rodgers music working Oliver Wood, Miami Vice shot world. It's glorious at it, and it excels in what I think the style it's trying to do. And that's why I really like Alphabet City. I also kind of like Vincent Spano. I love this little cult movie, and I encourage you to hopefully try and check it out if you can. If you're anyway into like 80s nostalgia and you haven't seen this film, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. It's at least worth a watch. And the music from Nile Rodgers, even if you hate it, it's just worth having on just to hear it, because that's the only way you're going to hear this soundtrack, at least for now. It's the kind of movie you can have a beer with and kind of totally get, but just like immerse yourself in the style and the music of the mid-80s in such a fun kind of super fantasy that Alphabet City is. So if you have seen Alphabet City and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.